Great news, guys. We have partnered with the good folks over at moonwalker.com, and Moonwalker is one of our favorite CBD companies that offer a wide variety of products. Those include Delta 8, CBD, HHC, CBN, CBG, and many, many more. Moonwalker has become the industry leader in Delta 8 and CBD products, pushing the boundaries of what is truly possible with hemp. By combining award-winning terpenes and natural flavors in unique custom blends, they explore new dimensions of taste, balance, and euphoria for all cannabinoids. Moonwalker offers tincture, gummies, vape cartridges, disposable vapes, and much, much more. I personally take the full spectrum CBD at 750 milligrams of CBD and have completely left my anxiety prescription in the cabinet. Anyone who listens to our show knows that we are teachers during the day and would not endorse something that would put us or our listeners in jeopardy when it comes to testing. If you are interested in supporting us and this great company, head over to moonwalker.com and use affiliate code MBREWS. That is MOONWLKR.com, and the affiliate code is MBREWS. If you have any questions or concerns about the legality of CBD, Delta 8, or any of Moonwalker's other products, please visit moonwalker.com/pages/legal. Enjoy the ride.
On December 1st, 1948, a man is found dead on Somerton Park Beach just south of Adelaide, South Australia. He has no identification, nor does he have an obvious means of death. That is where the mystery begins, but it only gets deeper from there. You're listening to the Mysterious Brews podcast, and tonight we bring you the case of the Somerton Man.
Listen to the wind blow, down comes the night. Run in the shadows, damn your love, damn your lies. Break the silence, damn the dark, damn the light.
Welcome to a deep, dark, dank, moist 107 in the shade.
Yeah, it ain't moist, bro.
There's a tropical rainforest in my pants.
Yeah, it's humid. It's more humid than humid.
My sweat has sweat. It's not good. It's not good.
No.
Well, we have had a little bit of traction on our Dawdleston messages, man. It's blown up 300 downloads.
Dang.
Yeah, and today's Thursday, so people digging it.
I haven't even listened yet. I planned on after we record. I gotta go on myself a little exercise walk, and I'm gonna listen to it.
Aren't you so sweet listening to us while you exercise?
No, I cringe every time I talk.
I do too. Hell, try fucking editing this crap, and you're listening to yourself, and they're like, good God, you over enunciate stuff.
Well, sad news in Georgia.
Super sad news in Georgia.
The Guidestones are no more. We have literally been saying, we're going to go visit the Guidestones. We're going to go visit the Guidestones for like a year now. And we really, truly, finally scheduled.
Next week.
Yeah, next week we were going to finally go on our trip, see the Guidestones, get some good barbecue, and now somebody bombed it.
Yeah, they showed I don't know if it's true or if it's even from the right, but they show the explosion, and then they show that a silver four-door car separate from the explosion.
Yeah.
And then, hell, last night, about 6 p.m., there's pictures on Atlanta news station. They've got a excavator out there with a big bucket pushing it over.
Says it was structurally unstable now. That's why they destroyed it. It's ridiculous, man.
Was it granite or was it marble?
Granite.
Takes a lot to structurally mess that, But anyway, yeah, sad day in Elberton, Georgia. And I was going to be there the next week within 30 minutes of the place, and I could have went out there one evening. But anyway, can't have nothing no more.
No. Yep, Georgia Guidestone's monument is destroyed after explosion.
What ought to be interesting is to see if the original guy that built it, if there was something, some kind of clause, if it ever did get destroyed, if there's money out there to have it redone.
Why would you? Yeah, it won't be the same though. They're going to rebuild it. Yeah, okay, it's brand new. Man, that was awesome. We should have went.
I know.
What kind of an asshole, religious nut, bombed something like that?
Well, it had been defaced graffiti-wise a couple of times, like trying to, read tea leaves. You're just not going to be able to do it. All right, so let's jump into this one. This one is the Somerton Man, and I thought this was going to be a short little notes edition for me.
It's a mystery. Probably why we're covering it.
All right, so here we go. On November 30th, 1948, it was a warm day in Adelaide, Australia. The city's main beach area, some 11 kilometers, roughly 6.8 miles southwest, was near Glenorgh, and it was a bustling city with the summertime crowd who were out enjoying the weather. Around 7 p.m., a local jeweler, John Bain, was walking with his family along Somerton Beach when something unusual caught his eye. There, lying on the sand across from the crippled children's home, which was on the corner of the Esplanade and Bickford Terrace, was a middle-aged man propped up against the seawall. He was dressed in a suit and leather dress shoes, lying back with his head resting against the seawall, his legs extended, and his feet crossed.
Kind of looked like maybe he had a little bit too many drinky poos and decided to relax on the beach. That's the way he looked.
Yes, and that's what Mr. Bain goes on to say, that he appeared groggy and was clumsily trying to smoke a cigarette. He brushed it off and figured the man was drunk. But what caught his eye was the fact that this guy was in a suit in the middle of summertime on the beach. Now, several other bystanders would later say that they remembered seeing the man in a similar state. On the 1st of December, 1948, at around 6:30 a.m., police are contacted by two boys who were out riding horses. They initially thought a man was asleep or drunk, but upon closer look, to make sure that he was okay, they discovered that he was pale and cold to the touch. The dead body was found lying with his head resting against the seawall with legs extended and the feet crossed. An unlit cigarette was on the right collar of his coat. There was no signs of a struggle. All of the labels had been removed from his clothing. His pockets contained an empty pack of juicy fruit chewing gum, a comb manufactured in the U.S., an Army Club, which is a British-style cigarette pack, a box of matches, and a unused bus ticket and an unused train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach. The body was taken to Royal Adelaide Hospital and examined by Dr. John Bennett, who placed the time of death around 2 a.m. He stated that the man had a Britisher appearance and was around 40 to 45 years of age and in extremely good physical condition. Now, the medical report states the following. Now, this is a little long, so bear with me.
Nope.
Okay, I'll just mute you and ignore you.
Yeah, you've done that before.
All right, so here we go. Now, remember, this is from the medical report and Dr. John Bennett. 180 centimeters, 5 foot 11 inches tall, with gray eyes, fair to ginger-colored hair, slightly gray around the temples, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, hands and nails that showed no signs of manual labor, big and little toes that met in a wedge shape like those of a dancer or someone who wore boots with pointed toes, and pronounced high calf muscles consistent with people who regularly wore boots or shoes with high heels, performed ballet, or was a football player. That's not one of them NFL football players, people. That's the old soccer football. Now, the doctor also stated that the man's toes could either be a genetic trait or even a characteristic of someone who is a long-distance runner. The man's last meal was a pasty eaten 4 hours before death. The heart was normal size and normal in every way. Small vessels not commonly observed in the brain were easily discernible with congestion. Now, they use this word congestion a lot, and so I think it means that it's not right.
Now, there was congestion of the pharynx, and the gullet was covered with whitening of superficial layers of the mucosa with a patch of ulceration in the middle of it. The stomach was deeply congested. There was congestion in the second half of the duodenum. There was blood mixed with the food in the stomach. Both kidneys were congested, and the liver contained a great excess of blood in its vessels. The spleen was strikingly large, about 3 times normal size. There was destruction of the center of the liver lobules revealed under the microscope. Acute gastritis, hemorrhage, extensive congestion of the liver and spleen, and the congestion to the brain. The autopsy showed that the man's last meal, like I said, was a pasty. And Dr. Dwyer, a pathologist, concluded, quote, "I am quite convinced the death could not have been natural. The poison I suggested was a barbiturate or soluble hypnotic. Although poisoning remained a prime suspicion, the pasty was not believed to be the source of the poison. Other than that, the coroner was unable to reach a conclusion as to the man's identity, cause of death, or whether the man seen alive at Somerton Beach on the evening of November 30th was even the same man that the boys found and that was lying on his examination table. So whatever happened to him, it messed him up on the inside." Okay, so congestion in a medical sense is an unnatural accumulation of blood in an organ or part. Hyperemia. So he had internal bleeding a lot, just about everywhere. So that's why they suggested that he was poisoned. Poison! I'll be here all week, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow. Amazing.
I know. Okay, so getting back to it. The man was clean-shaven and dressed in a white shirt, red and blue tie, brown trousers, socks and shoes, and a brown knitted pullover, and a fashionable gray and brown double-breasted jacket. He had no hat, which was very unusual for 1948, nor did he have a wallet. This led police to believe he had committed suicide. His teeth did not match the dental records of any known living person. His belongings, as well as the ethnic look of the man, suggested that he could have been Australian, European, or possibly American. South Australian police put out an urgent bulletin, and many people came to view the body. However, nobody local could identify the man. Based on the good doctor's diagnosis, the police treated the death as suspicious and began to investigate, just like they should have. On the 14th of January, 1949, staff at the Adelaide railway station discovered a brown suitcase with its label missing. The suitcase in question had been checked into the station cloakroom after 11 a.m. on November the 30th, 1948. It was believed that the suitcase was owned by the Somerton Man. Inside, authorities found one dressing gown and cord, one pair of slippers, size 8, one pair of pajamas, one razor strop, one razor, one shaving brush, one toothpaste and paste, and toothbrush, one soap dish, one bath towel, 4 singlets, one with the name torn off, one bearing the name Keane, Kean, 4 underpants, 2 jockey type, 2 ordinary type, 6 handkerchiefs, 2 ties, 1 bearing T. Keane, Keane, 1 pair Macro brand Crusader cloth trousers with dry cleaning or laundry marks, 1 sport coat, 1 yellow Pelico coat shirt, 1 business shirt with name tag gone, 1 scarf, 1 front and 1 back stud, 1 brown button, 1 tin of tan boot polish, the Kiwi brand, 1 laundry bag, name Keane, Keane, written on it, 1 piece of light cord, 2 coat hangers, 1 glass dish, 1 teaspoon, 1 hairpin, 3 safety pins, 1 card of tan thread, 8 large envelopes, 1 small envelope, 6 drafting pencils, 2 airmail stickers, 1 rubber, which is an eraser down there, 1 pair of scissors in scabbard and bound with sticking plaster, 1 knife in scabbard and bound with sticking plaster, 1 stencil brush containing an unidentified black powder within the bristles, 1 small screwdriver, 1 pair of broken scissors, 1 cigarette lighter, 6 $2 in cash found in the trousers pockets. That was a lot. Now, also in the suitcase was a thread card of the Barber brand orange wax thread of, quote, an unusual type not available in Australia. It was the same as that used to repair the lining in a pocket of the trousers the dead man was wearing. All indication marks on the clothes had been removed, but police found the name T. Keane, Keane, on a tie, Keane, Keane, on a laundry bag, and Keane, Kean, without the last E, on a singlet, along with 3 dry cleaning marks, 1171-7, 4393-7, and 3053-7. Police believe that whoever removed the clothing tags purposely left the Keane tags on the clothes, knowing Keane was not the dead man's last name. It has since been noted that the Keane tags were the only ones that could not have been removed without damaging the clothing, however. What was unusual was that there were no spare socks found in the case, and no correspondence despite the police finding pencils and unused letter forms. A search concluded that there was no T. Keane missing in any English-speaking country, and a nationwide circulation of the dry cleaning marks also proved fruitless. In fact, all that could be garnered from the suitcase was that since a coat in the suitcase had a front gusset and feather stitching, it could have been made only in the United States, as this was the only country that possessed the machinery for that stitch. Although mass-produced, the bodywork is done when the owner is fitted before it is completed. The coat had not been imported, indicating the man had been in the U.S. or bought the coat from someone of similar size who had been in the U.S. Now, police checked incoming train records and believed the man had arrived at the Adelaide railway station by overnight train from either Melbourne, Sydney, or Port Augusta. They speculated he had showered and shaved at the adjacent city baths. There were no bath tickets on his body before returning to the train station to purchase a ticket for the 10:50 a.m. train to Henley Beach, which, for whatever reason, he did not catch or purposely missed. He immediately checked his suitcase at the station cloakroom before leaving the station and catching a city bus to Glenelg. Although named the city baths, the center was not a public bathing facility, but a public swimming pool. The railway station bathing facilities were adjacent to the station cloakroom, which itself was adjacent to the station's southern exit on North Terrace. The city baths on King William Street were accessed from the station's northern exit via a laneway. There is no record of the station's bathroom facilities being unavailable on the day he arrived. Seemingly a dead end, police bring in an outside expert, a Mr. John Cleland, professor of pathology at Adelaide University. Cleland re-examines all of the evidence gathered so far and made an astonishing discovery. In the man's trousers, he found a secret pocket. This had been custom added and then sewn up again to conceal whatever was inside. When police opened it up, they found the most baffling of clues. In the Somerton Man's secret pocket was a scrap of paper printed with the words "Tommen should."
That's not a common phrase, by the way.
No.
It's not something you're just going to see every day.
And it is translated from Persian to mean finished. What is even stranger is the scrap came from the last words of the last page of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, an 11th century poetry book about life's transience written by Edward Fitzgerald. In July 1949, 8 months after the body was found, police received a startling new piece of evidence. A Glenelg man presented them with the copy of the Rubaiyat that seemingly matched the Tommen should scrap of paper. This edition of the book was from a small run printed in Christchurch, New Zealand. It used the same unusual font, and the final page of the book where Tommen should be found was missing. The man stated he found a copy of the rare book in his car lying on the floor with the words Townsend missing from it. He believed the book was placed in his unlocked car, which was parked near the Somerton Beach on the night of November 30th, 1948. It was confirmed the small piece of paper with the words of Townsend belonged to the book found within the man's car. Upon close examination, faint pencil marks were noticed inside the back of the book. These markings comprised of 5 lines of capital letters and what appeared to be a telephone number. Now, the phone number written at the back of the book led investigators to a local nurse who lived within Adelaide. When the nurse in question was shown, okay, so let me stop right here. So he passes away late 48. They don't find the suitcase until 49. So what they've done is they have made a death mask of the Somerton Man. And they also took photographs, but I'm thinking they just didn't carry those around at the time. They just carried the death mask around. So with that said, they go to this nurse that matches the phone number. And when she's shown the death mask, she was said to become hysterical at seeing the mask and close to fainting. Yet she instantaneously denied knowing the man. She was evasive and refused to talk to investigators about the Somerton Man, but claimed an unknown man had asked a neighbor about her near the time of the Somerton Man's death. She had also shared she had once owned a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, but she gave it away as a gift to a man named Alfred Boxall in 1945. Now, the investigators first assumed the identity of the deceased Somerton Man could be that of Alfred Boxall. However, that was quickly thrown away because Boxall was alive and well and still had the book with an inscription in it written by the woman. She signed it using the nickname Jestyn, Jestyn. The fact that both men, Boxall and the Somerton Man, possessed the same rare book and were somehow connected to, quote, Jestyn still is astonishing. Police did not keep records of the nurse or her details, and this impeded the investigation for the next 50 years. Her identity was not revealed at the time, and the Australian police force threw out her name and address, only keeping the telephone number. 50 years after they show her the death mask, Detective Gary Feltus matched the telephone number to a 1947 South Australian telephone directory. This led police back to a woman named Jo Thompson. Some 50 years after initial contact, Jo Thompson was continually evasive about the case, did not want to discuss the man, and did not let up about her connection to the body. And to the day she died, she maintained her silence on the whole matter.
This is pointing towards like some sort of espionage or something like that is what I'm thinking. Spying, something. Why keep silent?
Well, and it's that, what was the other case where they found the lady's, she's partially burned and her suitcase is burned, and they thought she was, it's very similar to that.
The Isdal woman,
Yes,
right?
yes, the Isdal woman.
In the archives.
Available wherever you may have it.
Or if you want a really good one, go to Netflix and look on Unsolved Mysteries. They did a really good job.
They did okay. I mean, they're no Mysterious Brews. I mean,
And when you throw several $100,000 behind your production value and your research, and you have writers, and you don't have a partner that's like, what case are we doing today? And it's like, dude, you picked it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did, didn't I?
somebody threw $100,000 behind this, we would be top notch.
I promise you, I would dedicate my life for $100,000 each a year. I would be nothing but Mysterious Brews.
We would be certified in all of everything that we could be certified in.
Absolutely.
Jo Thompson had a son, though, named Robin Thompson, but unfortunately, Robin died before Detective Feltus could interview him. Robin was a former ballet dancer with the same physical attributes as the Somerton Man, including the distinguishable dancer's calves that the mysterious Somerton Man had. Robin had the same genetic form of earlobes. Now, this gets into some crazy stuff, and I had forgotten how unique your ears actually are as the Somerton Man. And basically, what they're saying is that the lobe connected to the skin. There's also another distinguishing mark about his ears that we will get into in just a second. Now, this is a common connection in genetic ancestry, along with sharing their powerful calves and their love of dance. Professor Derek Abbott later became engrossed in the case and would eventually locate Rachel Egan, that's Robin Thompson's biological daughter, and possibly the Somerton Man's granddaughter. The involvement of Mr. Abbott and Rachel Egan would soon turn romantic, and they would end up marrying each other and having kids. Professor Abbott had become obsessed with solving the riddle and would use more scientific and forensic methods than those originally used in the 1948-1949 investigation. Now, Abbott consulted dental experts that concluded that the Somerton Man had hypodontia, and that is a rare genetic disorder. And photographic evidence presented also showed that Robin Thompson had the same condition, thus bringing the chance of a coincidence on this genetic condition as between 1 in 10 million and 1 in 20 million. Abbott now fathers the possible great-grandchildren of the Somerton Man. Now we get to the letters that were on the back of that little strip of paper.
What letters? This is the end of the mystery, right? There's definitely no more to this. It's just a dude who died that nobody will talk about. Nothing weird's going on.
No, this is just, they just happened to see a guy, he has no identification, dressed in a suit laying on the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just, asphyxiated on his own vomits, and he was dead.
And all of his internal blood vessels were all hemorrhaged.
Yeah, no biggie.
No big thing, man. This just happens when you pass out on the beach. So now to the letters. The 5 lines of letters lightly written in the back of the book were perplexing. They couldn't be easily deciphered to reveal anything meaningful. The letters are as follows: WRGOABABD. Second line is MLIAOI, and then that is striking through. Third line is WTBIMPANETP. The fourth line, MLIABOAIAQC. And then the last line of letters, the fifth line, is ITTMTSAMSTCAB. Now, there were a few additional marks that were noticed. The second line, like I said, had been crossed out, and there was a small X that was placed above the O in the fourth line of letters. It is also said that the beginning W's of the first and third line were written in a way that they could be mistaken or taken as M's, and the last letter S had a small line through the center of it. As more and more connections were unearthed about the book that this scrap of paper came from, the people involved in the Somerton Man, and the strange circumstances involving the entire case, these letters became an object of study for the solving of the case. They are the focus of a probable secret code. Assuming the letters were written in code, several methods have been applied to try and decipher them. Because the code was found within the rare book of the Rubaiyat of Omar of Khayyam, it is possible the book may be used to decode it.
Well, many code breakers, from the CIA, the FBI, to the Australian government, to the European governments. Everyone's trying to break this code, and no one has been able to do it.
No, and they said that they called it a one-time pad. Basically, you had to have the same edition book, and that comes into question whether or not the guy that says this strip of paper came from his book. But anyway, you would have to have the same book that it came from, and then you would have to go back. I guess that's the one-time pad kind of situation. Now, unfortunately, the original book found within the car has now been, imagine this, lost or purposefully misplaced. Detectives have been unable to find another identical copy. It is possible that Somerton Man's book may have been the only one which was especially made and disguised as the Rubaiyat in order to use as a one-time pad. Support for this theory is found from another case involving a Mr. Joseph Marshall, who was found dead, having a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam lying next to him. In 1945, the death of Marshall was believed to have been a suicide by the use of poison. His copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam was not a first edition like the Somerton Man's was, but it was a 7th edition. It was realized only 5 editions were confirmed published, so Marshall's copy should not have even existed. A similar question involves the Somerton Man's copy. It was supposedly published by Whitcomb and Toombs. However, another copy has never been found. So, like Coach alluded to, was the Somerton Man a spy?
I don't see any way he's not one. That's the only way this will make sense. I mean, if he's not a spy, then this is one of the greatest mysteries of all time. Some random dude with random codes randomly dies in a way nobody can tell how. It's just, I don't know.
And no one around the area knew him or had seen him previously. One theory centers around Alfred Boxall, who was purportedly involved in intelligence work during and immediately after World War II. In a 1978 television interview with Boxall, Stuart Littlemore asked, quote, "Mr. Boxall, you had been working, hadn't you, in an intelligence unit before you met this young woman, Jessica Harkness. Did you talk to her about that at all?" Boxall flatly replies no. And when asked if Jessica could have known Boxall, quote, "Not unless somebody else told her," end quote. When Littlemore implies in the interview that there may have been an espionage connection to the Somerton Man in Adelaide, Boxall replies, quote, "It's quite a melodramatic thesis, isn't it?" End quote. Boxall's Army records suggest that he served initially in the 4th Water Transport Company before being transferred to the North Australian Observer Unit, a special operations unit, and that during this time with that special ops unit, he rapidly rose in rank, being promoted from Lance Corporal to Lieutenant in just 3 months. So in 1949, the Somerton Man was buried in Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery. The Salvation Army conducted the service. Among those in attendance were Captain E.M. Webb of the Salvation Army, Laurie Elliott, Bob Whittington, S.C. Bryce, Police Sergeant Scan Sutherland, and Claude Trevelyan. The South Australian Grandstand Bookmakers Association paid for the service to save the man from a pauper's burial. His tomb is located at a gravesite numbered 106 on Row 12 in an area of the cemetery called Plan 3. However, the grave contains multiple burials because of expired leases, with the Somerton Man being the most recent burial. So it sounds like while they wanted to keep him from a pauper's burial, he's in a hole with 3 other people. Several years after the burial, flowers began to appear on the grave. Police questioned a woman seen leaving the cemetery, but she claimed she knew nothing of the Somerton Man. Around that time, Ina Harvey, the receptionist from the Strathmore Hotel opposite the Adelaide railway station, revealed that a strange man had stayed in room 21 or 23 for a few days around the time of the Somerton Man's death, checking out on the 30th of November of 1948. She recalled that he was an English-speaking man and only carried a small black case, not unlike one that a musician or a doctor might carry. When an employee looked inside the case, he told Miss Harvey he found an object inside the case he described as looking like a needle. There have been several unsuccessful attempts since finding the code to crack the letters found at the end of the book, including efforts by military and Navy intelligence, mathematicians, amateur code crackers, and in 2004, retired Detective Gary Feltus suggested in a Sunday Mail article that the final line, which states ITTMTSAMSTGAB, could stand for the initials of, quote, "It's time to move to South Australia, Mosley Street," where the former nurse lived that saw the death mask and got hysterical, just happened to live.
Surprise, motherfucker.
You gotta get quick. Why you got that thing set so far away from you?
I know. I keep trying, but I'm like, do. Hey, look. Well,
Good thing you edited out these long pauses.
You're right. I know it takes forever for me to get my little arms over there. So they have the lady that came forward saying that a man stayed at the hotel around the same time as the Somerton Man died. I know that I kind of glossed over that, but what she is suggesting, and what people that have bring that up in articles is suggesting, is that he was not the Somerton Man. He may have been the man that poisoned the Somerton Man. Now, looking back at the retired detective Feltus, a 2014 analysis by computational linguist John Reeling strongly supports the theory that the letters consist of the initials of some English text, but finds no match for these in a large inspection of literature and concludes the letters were likely written as a form of shorthand and it's not a code at all, and that the original text will probably never be determined. Now, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation made a documentary series called Inside Story. In 1978, they produced a program on the Somerton Man case entitled The Somerton Beach Mystery. Reporter Stuart Littlemore investigated the case, including the interview that we spoke about with Boxall, who could or would not add any new information on the case, and Paul Lawson, who made the plaster death mask. He also refused to answer questions about whether anyone had positively identified the body, which that's suspicious as shit too. Why would he be quiet unless he had been threatened?
There's no answer to that. I couldn't tell you. I mean, there's no reason for him to unless he was threatened.
Now, in 1994, John Haber Phillips, Chief Justice of Victoria and Chairman of the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine, reviewed the case to determine the cause of death and concluded, quote, there seems little doubt it was digitalis, end quote. Phillips supported his conclusion by pointing out that the organs were engorged consistent with digitalis, the lack of evidence of natural disease, and, quote, the absence of anything seen macroscopically which could account for the death, end quote. Now, former South Australian Chief Superintendent Len Brown, who worked on the case in the 40s, stated that he believed that the man was from a country in the Warsaw Pact, which led to the police's inability to confirm the man's identity. The South Australian Police Historical Society holds the bust, which contains strands of the man's hair. Any further attempts to identify the body have been hampered by the embalming, which back then was straight up formaldehyde, destroying much of the man's DNA. Other key evidence no longer exists, such as the brown suitcase, which was destroyed in 1986. And if I had to guess, the police lockup either had a flood or a fire, and that's how it got destroyed.
Ain't that how it goes? They should probably stop storing important stuff in the basement.
Yeah. I mean, call me crazy.
Put it on the top floor so if at least a flood can't get to it.
In addition, witness statements have also disappeared from the police files over the years. That's not suspicious. That's not suspicious at all.
It sounds, well, I mean, when you say it out loud, it kind of sounds weird.
That's terrible.
It sounds completely normal.
Now, we get to possible identifications, and I do mean these are threaded possible identifications. You can poke holes in just about each one of these, so take them with a grain of salt. Or if you love one, jump down that rabbit hole. I dare you. I double dog dare you. Possible identifications have been suggested over the years. An Adelaide newspaper, The Advertiser, when reporting the discovery of the body, gave the possible identification as E.C. Johnson, about 45, or Arthur St. Paynham. The following day, December the 3rd, 1948, Johnson identified himself at a police station saying, hey, bubs, I'm still walking around. That ain't me. That same day, another Adelaide newspaper, The News, published a photograph of the dead man on its front page, leading to additional calls from members of the public about the possible identity of the Somerton Man. By the 4th of December, police had announced that the man's fingerprints were not on South Australian police records, which forced them to look nationwide for the fingerprints, which turned up no hits. On the 5th of December, the Advertiser reported that police were searching through military records after a man claimed to have had a drink with a man resembling the Somerton Man at a hotel in Glenelg on the 13th of November, roughly 2 weeks before his body is discovered. During their drinking session, the mystery man supposedly produced a military pensioner's card bearing the name Solomonson. In early January of 1949, two people identified the body as that of 63-year-old former woodcutter Robert Walsh. A third person, James Mack, also viewed the body, initially stating he could not identify it, but an hour later he contacted police to claim it was, in fact, Robert Walsh. Mack stated that the reason he did not confirm the identity at the viewing was a difference in the color of the man's hair. Walsh had left Adelaide several months earlier to buy sheep in Queensland, but had failed to return at Christmas as planned. Police were skeptical because they believed that Walsh, at 63, was way too old to be the Somerton Man who they were looking at. However, the police did state that the body was consistent with that of a man who had been a woodcutter, although the state of the man's hands indicated he had not cut wood for at least 18 months.
Woodman cut if a woodman could cut wood.
He could cut a whole lot of wood if a woodman could cut wood. Elizabeth Thompson, one of the people who had earlier positively identified the body as Walsh, retracted her statement after a second viewing of the body. She did this due to the absence of a particular scar on the body, as well as the size of the Somerton Man's legs. She stated these two details led her to realize that the body was not that of Walsh. By early February of 1949, there had been 8 different positive identifications of the body, including 2 Darwin men who thought the body was that of a friend of theirs and others who thought it was a missing station worker. Although there was another claim of that of a worker on a steamship and then another claim of a Swedish man. Detectives from the state of Victoria initially believed the man was from there because of the similarity of the laundry marks to those used by several dry cleaning businesses in Melbourne. Following publication of the man's photograph in Victoria, 28 people claimed to know his identity. Victorian detective disproved all the claims and said that, quote, other investigations indicated it was unlikely that he was a Victorian. A seaman by the name of Tommy Reed from the SS Cycle in port at the time was thought to be the Somerton Man, but after some of his shipmates viewed the body at the morgue, they stated definitely that the corpse was that not of Tommy Reed. By November of 1953, police announced that they had recently received the 251st possible solution to the identity of the Somerton Man from members of the public who claimed to have met or known him. But they said that the, quote, only clue of any value was the clothing that the man wore. In 2011, an Adelaide woman contacted biological anthropologist Maciej Hindenburg about an ID card of a one H.C. Reynolds that she had found in her father's possessions. The card, which was a document issued in the U.S. to foreign seamen during World War I, was given to Hindenburg in October of 2011 for comparison to the ID photograph to that of the Somerton Man. While Hindenburg found anatomical similarities in features such as the nose, lips, and eyes, he believed that they were not as reliable as the close similarity to the ear. And this is what I had kind of hinted on at the beginning. The ear shapes shared by both men were a very good match, although Hindenburg also found what he called a, quote, unique identifier, a mole on the cheek that was the same shape and in the same position in both photographs. He stated, quote, together with the similarity of the ear characteristics, this mole in a forensic case would allow me to make a rare statement positively identifying the Somerton Man. Now, going back to the ID card, it was numbered 58757 and was issued in the United States on the 28th of February 1918 to an H.C. Reynolds, giving his nationality as British and his age as 18. Searches conducted by the U.S. National Archives, the UK National Archives, and the Australian War Memorial Research Centre failed to find any records relating to H.C. Reynolds. The South Australian Police Major Crime Branch, who still has the case listed as open, stated they will investigate any new information. So now there are two private investigations that began. There is the first one, which is the Abbott investigation, and that occurred through the University of Adelaide in 2009, more specifically March of that year. And it was led by Professor Derek Abbott. He started investigating the case through trying to crack the code, and he also wanted the body exhumed for DNA testing.
He's got to have a relative out there somewhere. Surely they could find something.
I mean, this thing's rocking on for like 60 years now. Abbott's investigation have led to some concerning questions about the assumption police had made on the case. Police had believed that the Kensitas brand cigarettes in the Army Club packet were due to the common practice at the time of buying cheap cigarettes and putting them in a packet belonging to a more expensive brand, because Australia was still under wartime rationing. However, a check of government gazettes of the day indicated that the Kensitas, I'm screwing this up, were actually the expensive brand, which opens the possibility that was never investigated, which was that the source of the poison may have been in the cigarettes that were possibly substituted with or for the victim's own without his knowledge. Abbott also tracked down the barber wax cotton of the period and found packaging variations. He had hoped that this would provide clues to the country where it was purchased. Now, decrypting the code began again from square one with fresh new eyes. It had been determined the letter frequency was considerably different from letters written down randomly. The frequency was to be further tested to determine if the alcohol level of the writer could alter random distribution. I'm pretty sure if I get drunk, my distribution is going to be random.
Yep.
Now, the format of the code also appeared to follow the quatrain format of the Rubaiyat, supporting the theory that the code was a one-time pad encryption algorithm. Copies of the Rubaiyat, as well as the Talmud and the Bible, were being compared to the code using computers in order to get a statistical base for letter frequencies. However, the code's short length meant that the investigators would require the exact edition of the book used. With the original copy lost in the 60s, researchers have been looking for a Fitzgerald edition without any success. Now, in a picture of the Somerton Man's ear, it shows that the upper hollow, so the big part on your ear, inside of your ear, is called the Simba, and that on his ear, it was larger than the lower hollow, the cavum.
Say Simba, like the Lion King?
Just like it.
Oh, wow.
So a picture of a normal ear shows that the upper hollow is typically much smaller than the lower hollow. The Somerton Man's ears type is possessed by only 1 to 2% of the Caucasian population, and it is an important clue to narrowing down his identity. It is possibly that any lost relatives may also have this feature. Now, investigations had shown that the Somerton Man's autopsy reports from 48 and 49 are, guess what, missing from the Bar Smith's library collection, along with Cleland's notes. So, Macy Henneberg, who we had talked about earlier, who said the ears and the mole would lead him or her, I don't know, I'm sorry, I gender identified, said that with that 1 to 2% of the Caucasian population possession, it just about is a exact match. And in May of 2009, Derek Abbott consulted with dental experts who concluded that the Somerton Man did have, in fact, hypodontia, which is a rare genetic disorder of both lateral incisors, a feature present in only 2% of the general population. In June of 2010, Abbott obtained a photograph of Jessica Thompson's eldest son, Robin, which clearly shows that he, just like the Somerton Man, had not only a larger Simba than cavum, but he also had hyperdontia. The chance that this was a coincidence has been estimated, like I said previously, at 1 in 10 million or 1 in 20 million. So the media has suggested that Robin Thompson, who was 16 months old in 1948 and died in 2009, may have been a child of either Alfred Boxall or the Somerton Man and passed off as Prosper Thompson's son. DNA testing would confirm or eliminate this speculation. Abbott believes an exhumation and an autosomal DNA test could link the Somerton Man to a short list of surnames which, along with existing clues to the man's identity, would be, quote, the final piece of the puzzle. However, in October of 2011, Attorney General John Rowell refused permission to exhume the body, stating, quote, there needs to be public interest reasons that go well beyond curiosity or broad scientific interest.
That's just stupid.
Yes.
It's one of the greatest mysteries of Australia, and you're just like, well, it needs to be more interest.
He's about as bright as that judge in West Memphis that's not going to test the DNA.
Oh, my God, that is just ridiculous. Don't even bring that up, man. That guy needs to be beaten with a brick stick.
Well, it's a lady, so.
Well, I'm not going to say a woman needs to be beaten, so she needs to be reprimanded in a disciplinary fashion.
Well, Feltus said that he was still contacted by people in Europe who believed the man was a missing relative but did not believe an exhumation, and finding the man's family grouping would provide answers to relatives as, quote, during the period so many war criminals changed their names and came to different countries, end quote, which it was at the end of World War II, so he does have a point. In July of 2013, Abbott released an artistic impression he commissioned of the Somerton Man, believing this might finally lead to an identification. Quote, all this time we've been publishing the autopsy photo, and it's actually hard to tell what something looks like from that, Professor Abbott said. Now, the second investigation that we're going to discuss is the actual 60-minute Australia investigation. So in November of 2013, relatives of the lady referred to as Jestin in the back of the book gave interviews to the 60 Minutes Australia news program. Kate Thomason, the daughter of Jessica and Prosper Thompson, said that her mother was the woman interviewed by the police and that her mother had told her she, Jessica, had lied to them. Jessica did know the identity of the Somerton Man, and his identity was also, quote, known to a higher level than the police force, end quote. Her father had died in 1995, and her mother passed away in 2007. Kate goes on to suggest that her mother and the, quote, Somerton Man may both have been spies, noting that Jessica taught English to migrants and was interested in communism and could speak Russian, although she would not disclose to her daughter where she had learned it or why she had learned it. Robin Thompson's widow, Roma Egan, and their daughter, Rachel Egan, also appeared on the 60-minute program, suggesting that the Somerton Man was Robin Thompson's father and therefore Rachel's grandfather. The Egans reported lodging a new application with the Attorney General of South Australia, John Rowell, to have the body exhumed and DNA tested. Derek Abbott also subsequently wrote to Rowell in support of the Egans, saying the exhumation for DNA testing would be consistent with federal government policy of identifying soldiers in war graves to bring closure to their families. Now, Kate Thompson opposed the exhumation as being disrespectful to her brother. If that's a relative of yours, how is it disrespectful if you're about to find out you're related to him? Now, there is a possible related case, and it is the Magnuson case. On June 6, 1949, the body of 2-year-old Clive Magnuson was found in a sack in the Largs Bay Sandhills, about 20 kilometers, which is 12 miles, up the coast from Somerton. Lying next to him was his unconscious father, Keith Waldemar Manginson. The father was taken to a hospital in a very weak condition, suffering from exposure. Following a medical examination, he was transferred to a mental hospital. The Magnusons had been missing for 4 days. The police believed that Clive had been dead for 24 hours when his body was found. The two were found by Neil McRae of Largs Bay, who claimed he had seen the location of the two in a dream the night before. Coroner could not determine the Magnuson's child's cause of death, although it was not believed to be of natural causes. The contents of the boy's stomach were sent to a government analyst for further examination. Following the death, the boy's mother, Roma Magnuson, reported having been threatened by a masked man who, while driving a battered cream-colored car, almost ran her down outside her home in Cheapside Street, Largs North. Mrs. Magnuson stated that, quote, the car stopped and a man with a khaki handkerchief over his face told me to, quote, keep away from the police or else, end quote. Additionally, a similarly looking man had been seen lurking around the Magnuson's house, and Mrs. Magnuson believed that this situation was related to her husband's attempt to identify the Somerton Man, believing him to be Carl Thompson, and that's S-E-N, not S-O-N, who had worked with him in Renmark in 1939. J.M. Gower, secretary of the Largs North Progress Association, received anonymous threatening phone calls that Mrs. Magnuson would meet with an accident if he intervened in the investigation of the Somerton Man. A.A. Curtis, the acting mayor of Port Adelaide, received 3 anonymous threatening phone calls stating, quote, an accident if he stuck his nose into the Magnuson affair. Police suspect the calls may be a hoax, and the caller may be the same person who also terrorized a woman in a nearby suburb who had recently lost her husband in tragic circumstances. I think they're way too related to be just some hoaxer out there fucking with people who lose their husbands. Soon after being interviewed by police over her harassment, Mrs. Magnuson collapsed and required medical treatment.
Stress?
That's what I'm thinking.
Gotta be.
Now, the second case that this is similar to is the Marshall case, and it is in June of 1945, 3 years before the death of the Somerton Man. A 34-year-old Singapore man named George Marshall, born Joseph Saul-Haim Marshall, was found dead in Ashton Park, Mosman, Sydney, with an open copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam on his chest. Ashton Park is directly adjacent to the Clifton Gardens. His death is believed to be a suicide by poisoning and occurred 2 months before Jessica Harkness gave Alfred Boxall the inscribed copy of the Rubaiyat. George Marshall, brother of David Marshall, who was later to become Singapore's first chief minister. An inquest was held for Joseph Marshall on the 15th of August of 1945. Gwyneth Dorothy Graham testified at the inquest and was found dead 13 days later, face down, naked in a bath with her wrist slit. So I think if you stick your nose in too far into this case back then, you did not tell the tale. So we have a timeline of events of the Somerton Man, but a lot of it is pre-Somerton Man, so I'm going to kind of skip over a lot. So, but we will get to what they think is the first dates for him, which is they assume that on November the 30th of 1948, between 8:30 a.m. and 10:50 a.m., the Somerton Man is presumed to have arrived in Adelaide by train. He buys a ticket for the 10:50 a.m. train to Henley Beach, but does not use it. The ticket was the first sold of only 3 issued between 6:15 a.m. and 2 p.m. by this particular ticket clerk for the Henley Beach train. Now, between the same time, there is no satisfactory explanation for what the Somerton Man did during those hours. There is no record of the station's bathroom facilities being unavailable and no ticket in his pocket to suggest he had actually visited the public baths outside of the station. Now, between 11 a.m. and 11:15 a.m., he checks the brown suitcase into the train station cloakroom. After 11:15 a.m., he buys a $7 bus ticket on a bus that departed at 11:15 a.m. from the south side of North Terrace in front of the Strathmore Hotel opposite the railway station. He may have boarded at a later time elsewhere in the city, as his ticket was the 6th of 9 sold between the railway station and South Terrace. However, He only had a 15-minute window from the earliest time he could have checked his suitcase into the cloakroom, which was about 60 meters from the bus stop. It is not known which stop he lighted at. The bus terminated at Somerton at 11:45 a.m. and inquiries indicated that he, quote, must have got on at Glenelg, a short distance from St. Leonard's Hotel. This stop is less than 1 kilometer or 3,300 feet north of Mosley Street address of the nurse, Jessica Thompson, which was itself only 400 meters from where the Somerton man's body was found. You have various witness sightings of the Somerton man between the 7 and 8 p.m. on the 30th of November. And then the 1st of December at 2 a.m. is the estimated time of death. They also estimate that he ate that pasty between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. on the 30th. Now, with the 2 a.m. estimated time of death, it's a quick opinion on the state of rigor mortis. While the ambulance was in transit as a suspected suicide, no attempt to determine the correct time was ever made. As poisons affect the progression of rigor, 2 a.m. is probably very inaccurate when it comes to the actual time of death. The 6:30 a.m. is when he is found dead by the two men on the horses. The 14th of January of 1949 is when the Adelaide railway station finds the brown suitcase belonging to him. June 6th through the 14th of 49 is when the piece of paper bearing the inscription Tom Should is found. June 17th and 21st is the coroner's inquest. July 22nd of 49 is when the man hands in the copy of the Rubaiyat. He supposedly found the same night that the Somerton man died. July the 26th of 49 is when they trace the unlisted phone number and all of that fuckery afoot.
Hey, I contributed for the first time like 20 minutes.
Now, July 27th of 1949, Sydney detectives locate and interview the very much alive Alfred Boxall, so he is ruled out as the Somerton man. Sometime in the 50s, the copy of the Rubaiyat turned into the police is lost. For some reason, another coroner's inquest is done on March 14th of 1958, and Alfred Boxall and the Thompsons are not mentioned at all in it, and no new findings were ever recorded. 1986, that's when his suitcase and the contents were destroyed. 94, the Chief Justice of Victoria, John Harbour Phillips, studies the evidence and concludes that the poisoning was due to digitalis. And then we get into a lot of the periphery people dying from 95 to 2009. Now, I say all that to say this.
Oh, you said, oh, okay, good. We're finally to the point.
On May 19th of 2021, South Australia Attorney General Vicky Chapman said, quote, for more than 70 years, people have speculated who this man was and how he died. Last month, Ms. Chapman said the decision to exhume the body followed, quote, intense public interest in the case. According to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation news channel, a wooden spatula and a brush were used to carefully exhume the remains from the grave, which were then placed in a new coffin before being taken away to a forensic science center. Assessing the Somerton man's remains may be the first step in a process to build a DNA profile and uncover answers in one of Australia's most famous cold cases. Authorities said if sufficient DNA evidence can be obtained, they will attempt to identify the man and where he came from. Quote, the technology available to us now is clearly light years ahead of the technologies and techniques available when the body was discovered in the late 40s, end quote, Forensic Science South Australia's Assistant Director of Operation, Dr. Anne Coxon said. Dr. Coxon said that tests of this kind were highly complex, but investigators would use, quote, every method at our disposal to try and bring closure to this enduring mystery, end quote. The case is part of Operation Persevere, which seeks to put a name to all unidentified remains in South Australia. Quote, it's a story that has captured the imagination of people across the state and indeed across the world, but I believe that finally we may uncover some answers. Attorney General of South Australia, Ms. Chapman, stated. Professor Abbott said that the process of identification from DNA typically would take months, if not years, presuming it was possible at all. Quote, assuming DNA gets extracted from his remains, the most likely way to identify him, you don't have a specific person to match him up against, is to do what successfully has been done in America, and it is also what adopted children do to find their birth parents. That is, to compare the DNA and DNA on a genealogical website like 23andMe and Ancestry.com. If you can find his distant cousins wherever they are in the world and from their family trees, triangulate them and find a part of the tree that has somebody missing in 1948, then that becomes a key person of interest for them to follow up on, end quote.
Don't do it, man. Don't give the government your DNA.
No, man, they're going to use it against you.
They're going to use it against you, man.
But Professor Abbott said some clues as to the man's origins might present themselves sooner. In 2018, he used 3 of the man's chest hairs to carry out research into the Somerton Man's maternal ancestry. He said there was a chance more might be revealed in the short term about his paternal line. Quote, it's possible they could get his paternal haplogroup fairly quickly, end quote. For those of you that failed biology, a haplogroup is a genetic population group who share a common ancestor.
Thank you very much. I'm guarantee you didn't know that.
I didn't until I wrote that definition down. And since the exhumation of the Somerton Man's booty, Professor Abbott has gone dark and cut off all communication with the media, which begs the question, why? If you were out there and you did your own investigation in the early 90s, why all of a sudden, when they exhumed the body to do DNA testing that you called for in your investigation, do you go dark? What is so earth-shattering about the Somerton Man's identity that no one seems to be willing to come forward with the DNA evidence? They exhumed his body in just over a year ago, but there has been nothing, nada, since then. So that begs the question, do they want this spy, which we both believe he is a spy, do they want him
Gotta be
found out or not? I don't know, man. I don't know about all that. I don't know what you're talking about over there. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is basically the Somerton Man case.
That's it? Just this hour and a half of words?
There is a website out there, and I kicked myself for not writing it down, but they basically, it's a blog, and they have posted for, God, I want to say since the early 2000s, different things out there about this case, and they go into a lot more detail on possible government cover-up, people putting out misinformation. There's a lot of different things out there.
He was a spy, bro. No way he wasn't a spy. And they used like some secretive CIA poison, and often. That's why they couldn't figure it out.
Well, I agree with you almost 100% because there's no sense, if he's not a spy, would you ever go to this extent in not wanting someone found? That's what I don't understand. It's almost like the Kennedy assassination. Every time it gets to the year where they're going to disclose everything they have, they reclassify it again. All right, so the website is tomsby2.com. Finally found it. And it is a huge, in-depth website on the Somerton Man's case. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be my recommendation for the week. Visit tomsby2, TOMSBYTWO.com, and jump down the rabbit hole further.
I got too many rabbit holes these days.
God, you and me both. I started like trying to really nail down some of these listener requests and kind of do some background information on some of them.
Yeah.
Did you know that you can translate whole websites with Google Translate? I learned that today because I've been in Germany trying to read their newspapers, and it's hard to do if you don't have that Google Translate. You trying to kill that cat?
Come on, dude. You've been quiet the whole time.
You're fine. Go ahead. Ain't nothing wrong with a little pussy in the background.
Yeah, I wish. Shit.
All right, what's your recommendation there, Coach?
Well, I'm going to recommend Criminal Minds. My sister got me into this show.
You've never
watched
seen it?
before. No, but
What
now
the
I'm
hell's
like,
wrong with you? We can't be friends.
I started binge watching it, and then I realized it's 22 episodes a season, 15 seasons. I was like, good God.
I know, and it's like the
I'm in the
best.
middle. I'm almost done with season 2, man. It's good. It's a good show. It's on Paramount Network if you've got it. All 15 seasons if you haven't seen it. Good show.
You and like 6 other morons are the true crime fans that have never watched it.
I know. I was like, why have I not seen this?
Very
My
good.
sister was like, I told you it was good.
Now, spoiler alert, Mandy Patinkin leaves.
Dude, why you didn't tell me that?
They do a good job of carrying on.
Shut up. Don't fucking, no more goddamn spoiler alerts. What the fuck's wrong with you?
He doesn't die, asshole.
I don't care what happens. Don't fucking tell me anything else, you moron. I'm gonna tell you the end of it right now. Like, that's my favorite character.
I stopped. He was mine too. I stopped watching it. God, probably season 10.
Stop. Just stop. Now I know he leaves before season 10. Stop. Just stop.
Hotchner and him didn't get along on that medical show that they were on before, and I don't know why in the hell the producers
Which one's
thought
Hotchner?
the dark-headed guy that's real,
The guy that's in charge? Yeah.
like Chicago Hope. Maybe I think they were both on Chicago Hope.
Maybe they thought they could get along this time.
Well,
All right, stop telling me stuff. Yes, now I was in a good mood despite everything I've gone through this week.
I was about to say, no, you wouldn't. Don't try to blame this on me.
Well, I'm in a worse mood than I was. It's been a rough couple weeks, guys.
It has, but Coach is coming through shiny as a new penny. All right, Coach, you got anything else?
You know I don't.
Deuces.